Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the weekly Wednesday for the Financial Freedom newsletter, where every week, every Wednesday, we delve into something inspirational, motivational, something excerpt taken from the Financial Freedom weekly newsletter. Wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify, on iTunes, Google, be sure to click the like, subscribe, share, comment. And without ado, let's get into the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. Today's conversation is going to be all about finances, financial literacy, financial independence, financial freedom, the FIRE movement. And with that, I have a very special guest, Tess Waresmith, and she has a very interesting story. She's able to get financially free, age 35. And for the female audience out there, we're going to hear all about what core values resonate, money mindset, resources, books, debt, etc. So it's going to be a fantastic conversation, and I'm happy to welcome Tess to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here, and I love this name of your podcast. It's so important. Everyone can achieve financial freedom. So I love that you're niching down. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And so kind of take us on your journey, way back and what you're doing now.
Absolutely. So I started my life with a huge fear of money. And growing up, I used to be really afraid that we wouldn't have enough money. And my mother used to always say, we have to make sure we have enough money to pay for this or that. And my parents got divorced really young. And so when I was really young, and so I was just always aware that money was a really, to me at the time anyway, it felt like a really scarce thing. And that's important context for my story, because I ended up graduating from university, really important mission of making sure that I was going to be okay to take care of myself, because I've witnessed all of these relationships fail. And I just knew that I was the only person that was going to be able to take care of myself financially. And so, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to save a lot of money in my 20s when I worked in a very interesting job. Actually, my first job out of college, I graduated into recession, so I couldn't find any work anywhere. So I ended up being an aerial acrobat on cruise ships. That was my first job. So I worked on Royal Caribbean cruise ships. And it was great because I was able to save a lot of money because I didn't have to pay for food. I didn't have to pay for accommodation. So that was very helpful. But one of my core beliefs about money, which is now I've realized is not accurate, and something that I spend my entire business now demystifying, is that investing is too complicated for the average person. So when I finally had enough money saved up and I felt like I was ready to invest, I didn't do it myself. I didn't really try to educate myself that much. I just figured I need to find someone smarter than me to take my money and to invest it for me. And that's the only way I'm going to be able to do it. So I ended up doing that. I found a financial advisor, a fiduciary, which for those of you that don't know, a fiduciary is somebody that's legally obligated to act in your best interest. And the short version of this story is that I gave them my money, and after a few years realized that I was paying extraordinary amounts in fees, thousands of dollars in fees. This person also sold me an annuity, which was not suited for me at my age. I was 27 at the time, and the annuity, which is a product that helps you create your own pension in retirement, a product that was better suited for people in their late 50s. So all in, I lost tens of thousands of dollars by working with this person and not educating myself on the basics of investing. And so after I had a ton of shame because I'd lost all this money, I committed myself to learning everything I could. I talked to millionaire investors. I read every single book, and I'm happy to share some of my favorite books that I think are a good place to start. And what I realized was it's not that hard. And we've been fed this lie that investing is not possible for the average person. And you have to be a super special educated person and have degrees or fancy credentials to be able to invest. And in 2023, it's just never been easier for anyone to get started, even if you're short on time, have some debt, or just a total investing newbie. So after I learned all that, I felt morally obligated to share what had happened to me and to help other people avoid my big mistakes. And so I started a business called Wealth with Tess. And now I teach women in their 30s and 40s how to invest using super simple strategies that literally anyone can do. So that's my origin story, and that's what I do now. And I love sharing it because there's nothing better than realizing that something you thought was really complicated is actually a lot easier than you thought it was.
Yeah. really interesting because I knew there's something extremely wrong with the financial system when bank executives were getting bailouts and using taxpayer money to fund, $10,000 trash cans. So yeah, but what's interesting is every cohort. Yeah, I love how you achieve financial independence. You said you're never going to depend on a partner, and for my grandparents, it was depend on the government, and for my parents, it was like it's all about job security. Your job is going to take care of you, your 401, and then kind of our generation, we grew up kind of with this huge rug pull, everything they taught us wasn't there anymore, and we had to go create our own freedoms. And I think a lot of the female audience is really resonating with your idea where you don't depend on another person for your financial freedom. You are, once you understand money, you can start doing it. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say, it's interesting. I hear whenever I talk about women having financial independence, and I share a lot of information on Instagram at Wealth with Tess. And I just today, Chris just posted a post about women and financial independence, and how every time I post about that, there's a lot of negative comments around, oh, any woman that is financially independent isn't going to want to be in a relationship, or that you're going to be lonely, and some very antiquated ideas about what it means to be financially independent. And when I say that, I don't just mean, having money so you can buy cool stuff. Financial independence to me is having enough money to leave a job you don't want to be in, start your dream business, to spend more time with your family. It has nothing to do with, being an independent, so independent that you don't rely on anyone. And, I'm financially independent and I need support and love and all that stuff. But I love the fact that if something happened, I could take care of myself. And there's so much freedom and confidence in that. So yeah, we're definitely still not in a place where there's equal representation of what money looks and feels like by gender. And so I am trying to normalize conversations around money and make it comfortable for women to talk about money too, because we definitely have a ways to go there as well.
Yeah. It's all about empowerment, economic empowerment. And the other thing was you talk about is, quote, I'm bad at money story is BS. And talking to entrepreneurs such as yourself, extremely successful, it's actually about habits and mindset. So kind of talk about the 3 things you need to start investing.
Sure. So one thing that I share a lot, like you just mentioned, is, your bad at money story is probably BS. And the reason I say that is because so many talented, brilliant people and women will tell me, oh, I'm bad at money, or I'm not good at it. Like it's something that we're born with. And money, budgeting, investing, it's a skill. It's just like anything else that you do a lot in your life. If you're consistent and you learn about it, you can get really good at it. So it's a weird thing to say like, oh, I'm bad at insert whatever it is. It's just a skill. It's something you can learn. And so when anyone says that to me, I gently usually challenge them and say, are you bad at money, or have you not dedicated any time to it? Because if you haven't read at least one book or listened to a couple podcasts, you're not bad at money. It's just unfamiliar to you. So that is my overarching message whenever I'm talking to any group of people that says anything like, I'm not smart enough to learn how to invest, or I'm bad at money. You don't know until you've tried. And if you're listening to this podcast, you care about personal development and growth. And that means you've probably done way harder things than learn how to manage your money and how to invest. So that's the first thing I'll say is you're probably not bad at money. But when it comes to investing, really, there's only 3 things that you need to do to be ready to invest. The first is to make sure you have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months expenses. And a lot of people want to skip past this part, or they say, yeah, I have that. This is really important psychologically to make sure that you know that if anything goes wrong, you have that sorted. The second thing you need to do is pay off any high interest debt, which would be anything over 7%. And the reason for that is because the historical average return of the stock market is roughly 10%. We can say 8% minus inflation. So, if you are investing, but you're still paying really high interest debt, you're kind of cannibalizing your own wealth and your own growth. So it's important to do those 2 things. And once you've done that, the third thing you need to do is just to get a basic education. And I am happy to give so many resources for you to get started. And that can look different for different people. For some people, you can read a book. My favorite book that changed everything for me was A Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. It's one of the best books on simple investing. It talks about index funds, which is a really easy way to start investing, which is basically just a way to buy a whole bunch of stocks with one fund. And so, you don't have to learn how to pick stocks. You don't have to learn to time the market. You just buy a big basket of stocks and you hold on to them. And so this book, I'll say it again, J.L. Collins, A Simple Path to Wealth, is one of the best investing books if you're a total beginner. Is invaluable. Like that one book that'll probably take you, 4 hours to read. It's actually a really easy read, is enough information that can change your life in terms of how much money you end up at retirement. So that is the third step. The third step is to get an education. And when people have financial anxiety or they feel like they don't have enough money to retire, the thing you need to do is learn about why you feel that way. Why are you nervous about retiring? And it's probably because you just don't know how much you need and you don't know the basics of investing. And so what's cool now is that there's so many ways to get educated. A book is one way. There's great podcasts. There's a podcast called Money with Katie, which is exceptional. And she talks all different ways to get started investing and adjacent money topics as well. Or you can take a program. There are so many great people. I offer small group coaching to teach you how to invest. There's a million other creators, like probably not a million. There's not enough people doing this actually, but there's a lot of great people offering free and paid education online. So regardless, if you need the accountability, maybe it's worth it to get a paid program like an online course or small group coaching program. But there are endless ways to learn the basics of what you need to know. And a lot of them are really affordable.
The other interesting thing is I've realized is that money is not rocket science because just money is just paper and ink and it's just an idea and that's how we exchange value and it's just once you understand like this basically it's like a resource and you basically save it off for a rainy day or use it to pay debt or invest and those two things if you save and invest can make you financially free and you don't have to be like a hedge fund or private. You don't need any of that. It's just kind of basic simple things.
Yeah, there's a great book. I'll give you one more book recommendation. There's a great book. You don't even have to read the whole thing, but you can Google about it. It's called The Millionaire Next Door. And the whole premise of the book is that there's all these people making very average salaries and all they're doing is living on less than they make and investing the rest. And some of them aren't investing that much. They're investing $500 a month for decades on end, and they're millionaires. And they're not millionaires because they were making millions of dollars. They're not millionaires because they picked the right stocks at the right time. They're not millionaires because they have degrees in finance and economics. They're millionaires because they literally invested a couple $100s a month for a few decades into a big group of stocks and left it alone. And that's all they did. And so it's so empowering to hear these stories and to understand that these are average people, people just like you and me that did it over time. And of course, if you want to be financially free earlier than that, then you need to find ways to make more money and to invest sooner earlier. But a comfortable retirement is really accessible to anyone as long as you start investing as early as possible. And so that's one other message I'll share is if you're listening to this and you're not really investing that much or you don't know how much you're investing, that's the number one thing you can do is get started as soon as possible. Even if your investing portfolio isn't perfect, you can learn as you go. And the one thing you can't do is go back in time and invest more. And that's what every single person I work with in my small group coaching program, every single person wishes they started investing sooner once they realize how simple it is. So you want to get an education and get started as soon as possible because that's what you'll regret is not starting earlier.
Yeah, you're referring to the power of compound interest. I talked to a lot of Gen Zs and all of them are more financially conscious than I'm Gen X, a Gen X millennial, and they're much more they're starting to save 10-20% just index funds like you talked about. They're interested in reading about real estate and how money works, what is the Federal Reserve and what is fractional reserve banking, all of that, and they understand that their financial futures are in their hands, which brings me to this question. And it's actually going a little bit off course, but everywhere you go to social media, you see these people touting standing next to Ferraris or Lamborghinis, or they're on yachts and they're surrounded by these celebrities, but then a year later they're gone. Kind of talk about how mainstream culture is like really feeding us the wrong information about money.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. So one of my favorite quotes from another great book called Psychology of Money is wealth is what you don't see, it's money unspent. And we have this broken perspective of wealth, and that is that wealth is something that you see. It's your house, it's your car. But if you take a step back and you think, okay, like, is that person wealthy because they have that car, or did they just spend $100,000 on that car? That means that they don't have that money growing in their accounts anymore. That means they already spent that money. That's money that they've already spent. And so some of the wealthiest people are usually people that don't appear to have a lot of money in the traditional sense of the way that we view the world and the way that we view wealth. And I was just talking to a mortgage lender about this a month ago. And she was talking about how everybody she works with is, trying to figure out how to afford these big houses. And they're like, how do all these people have these fancy kitchens and they have these big islands and these, fancy appliances? And her answer is they're in debt. They're all in debt. Like, now, obviously, she's exaggerating. Not every single person with a giant house is in debt, but a lot of them are. A lot of people that I've worked with are house poor because they wanted to make sure they had the house to look like they're successful. And, even I've experienced this myself because I have over $1 million net worth. I'm financially free. I can, I live in a multifamily property, so I don't actually pay a mortgage because the other units pay for my mortgage. And I live in a city that's great, but it's not the best city in Massachusetts. And so I think if you looked at my life, you would have no idea that I'm work optional at this point. But that's because my money is in growing assets. It's not in things that you'll see. So I think that's one really important thing to take away is when you see your friends, with really beautiful houses or cars or whatever, a lot of them are not doing as well as you think they are. And I know this now as a financial coach because the amount of people that I thought were doing better and reached out to me and said, hey, like, I'm struggling. And I'm like, well, I just saw your massive kitchen renovation, beautiful granite countertops, tell me about that. And they're spending money on the wrong things and they don't have the long-term vision of once you are investing and your money's grown, then you can spend money on whatever you want. But I personally would much rather have flexibility, freedom, and options versus things. And that's really what money is, right? You already said money is a tool, right? It's a tool to get us things that we want. Money is a tool for flexibility, options, and freedom. That's way more, and time. That's way more valuable than stuff. And so I think it's tempting to feel like you want to get the big house or the right car or whatever, because that's what wealth looks like. But at the end of the day, the wealthiest people are the people with their money and things that are growing, which is going to be investments and boring stuff like 401.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's like everything's backwards, like, the overpriced mutual funds and the financial advisors and kind of the media saying, "Oh, go out and spend, and go get into debt," and all of that's just like bad advice. But the other question is, you mentioned this idea of money as a tool and money as an idea, and a great quote I read was from Naval Ravikant. He said, "Don't focus on money for status and income, but focus on money for freedom and time," which kind of really jolted me, kind of this, because in the Western world, it's like our value is equated with achievement. That's how it's, Eastern and different countries view worth differently. The next thing is talking about is what are the most common myths females or women believe when it comes to investing?
Yeah, so there's a few that are money in general, and then I'll add some about investing. So with money in general, I think that a lot of women feel guilty for wanting money and feel like it's greedy to want money. And at the end of the day, like we've just been talking about, right? Money is a tool to give you, at first, security and safety, right? So you can, if you need to walk away from a toxic relationship or a toxic job. And I can't tell you how many women I've talked to that have stayed in relationships or jobs because they're financially uncomfortable and nervous. So that's the first thing. It's not greedy to want money, and it's not greedy to want a lot of money either, especially if you're using that money to do cool stuff, to make an impact, to build a business that makes the world better, to influence things that causes that you care about. So I think that's a really big myth. The myths more specific to investing are that it takes a lot of time to learn. I don't have a lot of time to learn, right? Women are busy. A lot of them have jobs and kids and houses to take care of and all this stuff. And so adding another thing to your plate feels laughable. Like, when am I going to find the time to invest? But if you learn the basics, if you commit to learning the basics of things like how to manage your budget so that you have enough money to invest every month, how to use retirement accounts to save on taxes, and then really the last step, choosing really simple investments that you don't have to manage. You set it and forget it. That doesn't take that long. You can learn how to do that in a matter of weeks. And in my small group coaching program, where I teach people how to start investing in open accounts and invest in simple investments, we do that in 4 weeks' time. That doesn't mean you're a millionaire in 4 weeks, but it means that you've built the knowledge to be able to continue to invest over time and to eventually get to whatever your financial goal is. So I think the misconception is that it takes a lot of time to learn how to invest and it's too hard. When in reality, it only feels too hard because it's unfamiliar and because the financial industry has done a really good job of making it feel really complicated with all the financial jargon and all this nonsense. If you learn how to translate the financial jargon and you learn how to use simple strategies, it's not a time suck, and it's honestly very, very straightforward. So I think those are two really common myths that hold people back, and it's a shame because a lot of people I work with, they're like, oh, I've been wanting to do this for years, and then they learn how to do it and they go, that's it? That's the whole thing? And so now, of course, there are more advanced investing strategies. And if you get into other stuff like real estate, that's certainly more hands-on and that does take more time. But to get started investing in the stock market in a way that's going to help you grow your money over time and help you retire comfortably, that stuff takes weeks of intentional effort. So I think those are probably the biggest myths that I hear.
Yeah. The other common myth that I've come across is women feel like they need to depend on the man. Like the man should be the breadwinner, take care of everything, and kind of these roles, kind of those stereotypes. And so what do you say for that kind of mindset where basically women are basically handing over their power to men or to their spouses?
Yeah. I think it's a larger issue than just, if you have a partner that takes care of your money, or even a financial advisor that's managing your money for you, and even if they're doing a great job, you just never know what's going to happen, right? Women, first of all, live way longer than men. Sorry. And so if you don't understand your financial situation and your partner passes away, that's going to be horrible because you're dealing with a horrible situation and you don't know how to manage your money. If there's divorce, 50% of people get divorced. That's a high percentage. And I know because of the women in my small group coaching program, a good chunk of them have just gotten divorced. And so they're managing their money for the first time. And I hate that they have to deal with that at that point, right? Like that's like a very stressful, anxiety producing, grief producing event in your life. And it's not something to take lightly. And it's certainly very emotional. That's not the time you want to be learning how to manage your money. And so I don't feel like it's optional. It's not about gender roles. It's really about safety and understanding like anything could happen. And so there are women I know that have great, amazing partners and they're great guys and they're awesome, but you just never know what's going to happen. And also, especially if you have kids, like you want to set an example for your kids to know the basics so that you can pass that knowledge on to them. And so there's so many reasons why it's so important to learn the basics. And if somebody discourages you from learning about your finances, that's because they want control. And that's a scary thing. And then that leads, there is such a thing as financial infidelity and financial abuse. And that's really scary. And you want to keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not about whether you trust your partner or not. It's really about the fact that every single person needs to have a basic investing education because you never know what can happen. And especially for the people around you, especially if you have kids, you want to set an example for them and show them that this is something that they can do too. And that way, If they end up with a great partner, awesome. If they don't, that's okay too. And they can take care of themselves. So again, it goes back to some of the themes we've talked about, Chris, like freedom and options, right? Like that's what it is. It's a way to make sure that you have freedom and options, regardless of how you want to live your life.
What a wonderful way to end it. How can people contact you? I know you've spoken at FinCon and you're on social media. Kind of how can people reach out to you, etc.?
Yeah. So the best way to get in touch with me is to follow me on Instagram. That's where I post a ton of information at Wealth with Tess. And it's the one with the blue check mark. There's probably some others that are pretending to be me, but it's just the one with the blue check mark. And then if you want to get started, I have a free Savvy Investor Starter Pack that outlines those 4 steps that we kind of talked about over the 4 weeks to help you get started investing. And so there's a ton of great information in that. And that's at Savvy. And in that guide actually is a whole video. I think it's a 20-minute video of the 8 investing mistakes I see the most that can cost you thousands of dollars, most of which I've made, which is why I know about them. So if you want to avoid the mistakes that I made that cost me a lot of money, you can watch that video. So it's worth it for that. So that's Money Comfy.
Excellent. And really fascinating talking about, not being financially dependent. Talk with my clients about financial freedom from their jobs. And, it's all about mindset and habits. All of Tess's resources will be in the links and show notes. And thanks for a fantastic podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love these questions. I appreciate you bringing it up. That's so important that we normalize these conversations. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I'm so excited to be here.
I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful, inspirational, motivational piece. Again, wherever you are listening, if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Amazon, Audible. And without much ado, be sure to thank this show's sponsors, and we'll see you next week.